YouTube Ozic going the Goat House is back. Today I'm going over 5 NFL players that will be traded, and I think sometime soon because free agency opens next Monday, officially next Wednesday, but things kick off on Monday. So these players could be traded at any given time. In this video, we'll talk about landing spots, we'll talk about value, and I'll give you a prediction. So excited to break this down. We have videos very similar. Other trade candidates would cover free agency. We'll have free agency predictions coming up this weekend because free agency is right around the corner. And we cover the NFL draft as well. So like, subscribe to notifications on. Be much appreciated. Follow us on Twitter, live news, rumors, and updates. You're missing out if you're not following us there. Some extra content, especially for our Twitter subscribers. Links put in the comments for that. Our Discord and our sponsors, GLD Shop, have their Cowboys chain on right now. They have all NFL teams and more. Sponsored by Liquid IV and Walk the Mock as well. We have codes for those sites. Again, there's links pinned in the comments. First one, Aaron Rodgers, top 3 landing spots. I narrowed it down to 3. The other guys, I narrowed it down to 5. But you got the Jets, and then you got retirement, and then you got the Raiders. Pretty much in that order. The rest of this video, I don't pay attention to the order too much, but that one I actually think is in that order. Value is actually going to be a conditional first-round pick, or it could be like a second that turns into a first if Rodgers continues to play maybe next year. The Jets don't want to trade for him. He kind of just plays these games every single year. So it could be a conditional pick there, or it could be multiple day 2 picks. It's hard to imagine just, former MVP back-to-back, just a year ago, going for less than a first round or even a conditional one doesn't seem right. But the circumstances, his situation, the contract is a little interesting, obviously very pricey, especially for in future years for this team. Could retire anytime soon, any given time, really. The Packers are in a situation where they want to go Jordan Love. They don't want to be stuck with Aaron Rodgers' contract. So they won't be stuck with them. They'll ship him off, and that kind of drops the value a little bit. And it sounds like other teams are kind of out on him as well. It's almost sounding like the Raiders might even be. They might just rather go in a different direction. So and that kind of just leaves the Jets or retirement. And I still throw the Raiders in the conversation, but so I think that drops his value as well. So do they even get the conditional one? Is it just a straight up 2 with, I would imagine something else in there as well. If he sits around and can't decide, doesn't decide, and then the Packers are just desperate to kind of move on from him because they want to ship off, they want to start Love, they just want to ship off Rodgers, then he could be pretty damn cheap as well. But I'm going to predict the Jets right now. I think everyone watching this would predict the Jets. This was a pretty obvious one maybe, and then maybe he has another darkness retreat in a year. Definitely could see that. Blowing the offseason up again, making a decision. I do think that's part of the conversation, though, the Jets are having with him. Like, are you confident you're going to be playing next year? And if they end up trading him, I'm gonna be confident that they're confident that he's going to be playing next year. So I'd kind of throw that in the prediction too. I think it gives us more than 1 year with the New York Jets. So it's going to be interesting to see him away from the Green Bay Packers, taking that Brett Favre route. Will he end up on the Vikings? Probably not at some point, but that'd be pretty wild. But going to predict the Jets. I think everyone expected that. Next, DeAndre Hopkins, the Cardinals receiver. There's been talk about this pretty much all offseason so far. The Cardinals feel like they're in some sort of rebuild or retool mode, and maybe Hopkins isn't a part of that. Maybe just looking to get more cap space, even though they have some, but build it the way that Gannon and Ossenfort, their new GM, wants to build it perhaps. And maybe Hopkins and Murray didn't get along too well. Not that it was super negative, but I kind of noticed that a little bit. So and then Murray's going to miss probably a little bit of the early portion of the next season. Hopkins, send him to more of a contender. Send him somewhere who wants to pay him, and then a legit quarterback for him right away to keep him kind of happy. So I have a top five landing spots, no specific order. I like the Browns. I've talked about and gave you scenarios with the Browns for DeAndre Hopkins in past videos because they need a receiver. It may not look like they have cap space right now. They will. They're going to restructure Deshaun Watson. They'll have some space. And they'll do more things as well. And then he has that connection with Deshaun Watson, so that looks great. The Patriots have cap space. Belichick's spoken highly of Hopkins in the past. They have Bill O'Brien, who coached Hopkins. He also traded Hopkins away when he was kind of playing that coach and GM role with the Texans. Definitely could use another receiver. Could be that Devontae Parker style receiver, though, but a lot better, obviously, who they have. And I do think they like. The Giants definitely could use another outside receiver there. You know, let me curious to see. Do they want to add a slot receiver? Do they like Wan'Dale Robinson for the slot? I think they do, but can he stay healthy? Can he produce? And then two teams that you might view as wild cards, the Cowboys and the Chiefs. Chiefs are always looking for ways to get better. I've heard Hopkins or the Chiefs thrown out there when it comes to Hopkins. Maybe they even though a different style of type of receiver, Juju Smith-Schuster, maybe they'll let him walk, and they're just looking ways to get better and kind of slightly change it up like they kind of did this year. They want to, stay fresh, stay unique, and do it again. And the Cowboys, I keep hearing that the Cowboys offense is going to look a bit different with guys leaving and new guys coming in. I've also heard look out for them to make a splash move this offseason when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. So trading for DeAndre Hopkins sounds kind of like a splash. We talked about Brandin Cooks, and we'll talk about him in this video actually, but possibly for the Cowboys, Brandin Cooks. Is that splashy enough? You could argue that it is. So, but that's why you kind of watch out for the Cowboys and the Chiefs there. Trade value, day 2 pick, could be a little bit more, could be 2 day 2 picks. I think the value kind of drops since the start of the Hopkins trade discussions till now, maybe a little bit. So we'll see. Maybe it's just 1 day 2 pick. Hard to imagine it's just like a day 3 pick. That just doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem like enough. My original thoughts were the Patriots back when the rumors came out that Hopkins could be traded. I like the fit there. I still think it could work with Bill O'Brien. They have the cap space and be willing to pay him, obviously. And again, they can afford him right now. I've been talking a lot about the Browns recently. Just a fit with Deshaun Watson, so they do make a lot of sense. Something I keep hearing is the Browns not only want to add a receiver, but they specifically want to add speed at the position. And Hopkins is a speedy receiver, but I kind of got the feeling they're going to go for more of a speedster to pair with Amari Cooper. Maybe a guy like Brandin Cooks. A guy whose number one trait is speed. Is the way I took it. They definitely could be on Hopkins still, but I'm going to go back to my original thought, and the Patriots make a move for DeAndre Hopkins here. And back with Bill O'Brien there. I could see that. Some people probably like, nah, he traded him away. Bill O'Brien was playing GM then. He's not playing GM now. Thought he can save some money, get some picks. I think it's a little bit different here. So they get a weapon here for Mac Jones. Next one, talk about Brandin Cooks. And speaking of the Cowboys, I'm just going to kind of stick with that. But top 5 landing spots, you'll see some similar teams there. But the Cowboys, the Packers possibly could be looking for some speed on the outside there. The Giants, the Browns, I keep hearing they want a receiver and they want some speed on the outside. And the Ravens kind of just fits what they look for in receivers, which is kind of the speedster guys. But here is a better one than what they've been looking for and adding in the past, which maybe they'd like to do. Value could either be a 3rd or it could be a 4th. I don't think anything more or anything less. And I'm going to continue to predict the Cowboys. They were very much in on him at the trade deadline, so we knew they had interest. They could still have interest, or maybe their interest is elsewhere, DeAndre Hopkins or somebody else. They had interest in Odell Beckham Jr. as well. But I think that kind of went away because of injury concern and failing the physical. But they very well could have interest in him in free agency again. But I don't think that takes them out of a guy like Cooks as well, because at the deadline, they knew they were going to have interest in OBJ too, and they're opening just to add as many receivers as they could there. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys. There's known interest. I guess maybe it's not anymore, but there was known interest at one point. I said the Giants could really use him. Definitely could really use him. I like the Giants for them as well, but I'm going to go with the Cowboys here. But this is a guy, it's a little tricky because there's so many landing spots. We've already heard that there's teams from both conferences calling the Texans. There's already been discussions. So maybe a little tricky to predict the exact landing spot, but this is a guy we know has to be traded. Like, he will be traded there. And another receiver, it's always receivers here. This one's been talked about very recently. Allen Robinson, the Rams receiver. The Rams are going in some sort of rebuild mode here, and they're sending players away. They're going to surprisingly cut some players already, like Bobby Wagner. Maybe Leonard Floyd's coming as well. It sounds like they want to trade Ramsey and Robinson. Some of these are a little surprising. But yeah, you may say who would want Allen Robinson because he had a down year. And the Rams in general had a down year. Stafford was off, but a big part of why he was off was the offensive line was so bad. They were beat up, and everything just wasn't right. And Robinson actually was getting more separation than you think, or than kind of the media will say. He does need to be better, needs to be more consistent, because even when he's on the Bears, he either looked like a top 10 receiver or he disappeared for a bit. Maybe quarterback play had something to do with that. Perhaps you could make a case. But also, why would a team trade for Allen Robinson? Maybe you say that because maybe he's too expensive. But the Rams, it's already been reported the Rams will help pay a portion of his salary to facilitate a trade, to make a trade happen, to get a draft pick here. And still, at the end of the day, even though you're paying a portion, you're still clearing space at the end of the day. So top 5 landing spots. I went 2 NFC North teams, the Packers and the Vikings. And I got the Ravens, Giants, and Cowboys in there as well. Of course, there could be more teams. I actually think there could be a lot of teams interested if the Rams, and they will, I believe, based on the reports, if the Rams pay a portion of the contract, because he ends up being cheaper. He actually may end up only costing, under $10 million, $10 million the very maximum, but under $10 million, single digit, amount there in terms of millions, which is pretty good because receivers are getting a ridiculous amount these days. And I'd say right away I put a 5th round value in there because he was a little off last year. The Rams are just looking to ship him off. But if they pay not only a portion, but even more, like a big portion of the salary, a big chunk of it, that could increase his value a little bit. And teams may go like, hey, this is probably still a pretty good receiver. We can get more out of him than the Rams did last year. He's going to end up being pretty cheap if they pay this large of a portion. Maybe they don't pay that large portion. That would be a 5th round or maybe even later, 6th round. But I think there's a possibility for a 4th round pick. And I was back and forth, actually, between the 2 NFC North teams. I went the Packers here because the Packers right now need a receiver more than the Vikings, but I'd keep it. People might be surprised by the Vikings here, but I'd keep an eye on them. They could move on from Adam Thielen. If they move on from Adam Thielen, I might put them at the top of this one here. I think Sean McVay and that offense can get the most out of Allen Robinson, maybe what the Rams thought, where Sean McVay was before, what they thought they could get out of him, in that offense. So they're going to, I've heard the Vikings, if they move on from Thielen, watch out for them in the trade/free agency market. But the free agency, new money in free agency, those guys are getting overpaid. They tend to a little bit. Robinson's kind of old money, already under contract, and the Rams will pay a portion of his contract. It'll be much cheaper than what they would have to dish out to Adam Thielen, perhaps. So I'd watch out for them. But right now, I do like the Packers. There's some talk about them potentially wanting Lazard back. I heard some other teams could have interest in Lazard. I feel like it's a guy that could probably get paid maybe more than what a team would have to pay Robinson, maybe more than what you think his value's at. And I don't know, the way Lazard was talking in the locker room at the last game, it just made it sound like he doesn't want to be back or won't be back. So maybe this Allen Robinson, who the Packers actually had interest in a few years ago when the Bears got him, maybe Robinson, who I still think has more talent than Lazard. Lazard's underrated, but has more talent than him, but actually could end up being cheaper because one guy's going to get new money. One guy, the old team, the Rams, going to pay a portion of the deal. So the Packers made some sense here. There's also a scenario where they're just strictly looking for a slot receiver. Maybe they use Christian Watson and Dubs on the outside. Maybe they bring back Lazard, who's an outside guy as well. And in that case, they're just strictly looking for a slot receiver, which Robinson's lined up there at times, but I view him as an outside guy. So that would kind of scratch the Packers off the board, in my opinion. If they bring back Lazard, that would kind of scratch him off. That would definitely scratch him off the board. But yeah, I look at those NFC North teams there, but he actually ends up being cheaper than maybe some free agents that aren't as talented as him, or teams' current receivers that they might cut. That maybe around the same talent, maybe their current receivers maybe a little bit better. Maybe you think Adam Thielen for Vikings as an example is a little better, but he could end up being cheaper for the Vikings, Robinson that is, depending on how much of the salary the Rams pay there. So a new candidate to look out for, and it just really feels like the Rams want to move on from him there. It could even be less in terms of the trade value there. It just depends on how much the Rams will pay in terms of salary. And speaking of the Rams, Jalen Ramsey just really feels like, it was reported a couple weeks ago that the next couple weeks to watch out for him. He could be dealt. There's already been discussion. So really feels like it could happen. The Rams going in that rebuild stage. I've kind of talked about in separate occasions, multiple different occasions about this. And I link the Lions to him pretty much every time. But the Lions having the draft capital, having the need at corner, and then having Brad Holmes, who worked with the Rams for a bit. there makes a ton of sense, having cap space as well. Panthers with Ejiro Evero at defensive coordinator there makes a lot of sense. Could use another corner. They're clearing space right now. Raiders, big need at corner, have cap space. Titans, it's a tremendous fit, scheme fit. They are clearing some space, other needs specifically on the offensive line. And I talked about the Dolphins in the past, I talked about other teams as well, but I'm going to throw the Cowboys in there. Could make a splash move. Could be looking to get better at corner. Maybe they're not ready to pay Diggs long term, and they just want to get Ramsey, a durable corner in there. Could make some sense. I think his value is a first-round pick, probably a late first-round pick. If it's not, then it's multiple day 2s and maybe some day 3s in there as well. I'm going to continue to go with the Lions. There, in terms of scheme fit, I look at the Panthers and the Titans. I think those are the best scheme fits, and then even his former former coach on the defensive staff, Ejiro Evero, is with the Panthers, so that kind of makes sense there. Panthers make a lot of sense, but they kind of the issue with them is they need their picks to trade up for quarterbacks. That feels like that's what they're going to do. So that's maybe why not the Panthers. Maybe why not the Lions, because they've been doing such a good job drafting, and the cornerback class is absolutely loaded. Maybe they just, Brad Holmes and company, they just trust their judgment. They're confident in themselves, like we're going to get some good young players. My thinking, though, is they can do both. They can get Ramsey, and they can get one of those very solid defensive backs that are pretty versatile, that really play well in the slot corner, so they can use both. They were playing Mike Hughes in the slot last year. Or they can grab another outside corner, too, just completely change it. Just go Ramsey and an outside corner from the draft. I think most likely we see, the guys they have out there. I mean, they got some decent young ones, Okudah, Jacobs, Aruarie, if they want to keep those guys on the team, obviously, but some of them obviously will be, but I think they could be looking for a starting outside corner like Ramsey or early draft pick, and a slot guy, probably through the draft, maybe through free agency as well. It's a possibility. So Lions definitely a team to watch this offseason. So those are 5 players. I'm just really feeling like they're going to be traded, and it could be anytime soon. Could be right now as I'm talking. It could be right as free agency kicks off, or right at, during the first week of free agency, or maybe it could be a little bit closer to the draft, maybe a little later than free agency. And there's other guys that will be traded. There will be surprises. There sure was surprises last year. I know some of the Broncos players are being talked about. Courtland Sutton, Garrett Bowles, definitely a possibility with those guys. Thought about sneaking in this video. I don't think they're desperate when it comes to Courtland Sutton. They're just trying to see what they can get. Which I like Sutton a lot. And then Bowles, teams might want to see what they can get in free agency first, or maybe even the first round of the draft, before dealing for Bowles. So it's one that feels like Bowles and the Broncos could be ready for a split, pretty close to guaranteed. But I don't know if that's going to be. It could be right now, or it could be a long time from now, but still this offseason. So that was a tricky one as well. Didn't want to guarantee anything with those. But there will be surprises. We have similar videos like this on the channel, with more candidates, trade talk, free agency talk, draft talk. We got you covered with every single thing NFL, anything you can think of. So head over to our channel, check out those recent videos. You won't be disappointed. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications on while you're there. It'd be much appreciated. Very important. Follow us on Twitter, because we have the live news, rumors, updates, just constantly talking with you guys about everything NFL. There's a link put in the comments for that and anything else you are looking for. But yeah, that wraps this one up. Thanks everyone for watching. Goodbye.